Hello and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tanitria Williams, licensed professional counselor, and I am very excited to be back with you all today. I've been away for about 2 weeks, and so again, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are having a really good discussion today. We are talking about dealing with toxic family members, and we all know that our family has a huge role when it comes to our mental health. So I want you guys to join me. I am actually about to share this broadcast to a couple of groups. I'm going to wait for a couple people to join us. You know what I want you to do if you are watching us. I want you to hashtag live. Let me know that you're watching live and let me know where you're watching from. If you're watching the replay, also hashtag replay. And again, let me know where you're watching from. Um, I'm pretty excited. Let me see. I don't see it on the broadcast on my Facebook page. So up there we go. So let me share this again to a couple groups that I belong to, and we're going to get started. There we go. I'm going to share it to my story. Go ahead and share this broadcast if you are watching. And tag your friends and family. Let them know that they need to be in here because this is an important topic, and it's a topic that I think all of us can benefit from because we all have family members. We all have, excuse me, people that maybe we need to learn how to set appropriate boundaries for, and all of that good stuff. So again, come on in the room and hashtag your friends, hashtag your family, and share this video. I do see a couple people joining. I don't see any comments, uh, but hopefully you guys are sharing and tagging. So again, what are we talking about today? Today we are talking about how to deal with toxic family members. Go ahead if you have ever dealt with someone in your family and it felt like you were in a toxic relationship, or if you have dealt with being in an environment where it felt like it was a lot of toxicity within your family, go ahead and put a one in the comments. Or even if it's just one or two people in the family that it causes you struggle, mental anguish, some anxiety or stress, go ahead again, put a one in the comments before we even get started. So today we're going to talk about how to deal with toxic family members. Why? Because we are all born into a family. We are all having to learn how to navigate handling and taking care of our mental health regardless of what our family background is like. And so we're going to talk about seven things to help you with dealing with toxic family members. So the first thing, and I'm going to go through all these things, and then obviously we're going to go into each one of them more in depth. So the first thing is you have to recognize the toxic behavior. So the first thing, again, to recognize the behavior that's toxic. Number two, you have to learn how to establish boundaries. Three, release the shoulds. Number four, develop self awareness around your triggers. Number five, communicate clearly. Number six, prioritize self care. And number seven, connect with people who are healthy for you. Again, we're going to break this down a little bit more, but I am really, really thankful to be back on here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So, the first thing we said, in order to effectively deal with toxic family members, it is important that we learn how to first recognize toxic behavior. Why is this important? Because when you are around family all the time, what is actually unhealthy may seem very normal. And so, if you don't know that this is unhealthy, oftentimes you will just go along with things and you don't establish appropriate boundaries because to you, this is normal. And I'm going to give an example, and not necessarily about toxic behavior, just how you normalize things. And when you're around other people, they can actually point out that that's not how everyone does it. And so there are people who have been physically abused. There have been people who have gone through all types of things, and they actually did not realize that it was abuse until they were around healthy environments, and they went, oh, this is not the way we do things. And so you have to have something to compare it to. And so what I want to do is to go through helping people to understand and to recognize toxic behaviors. I also want to say you may see some of these behaviors to a degree from a family member. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are toxic people, right? So you may your grandma may tell you that you've gained weight over the holiday season. That doesn't necessarily mean that grandma is toxic if that's kind of the extent of her criticism. When we're talking toxicity, we're talking to a unhealthy level, right? So I do want to make sure that we're not hearing one little example and we go, oh, my mom is toxic, I can't talk to her anymore because she told me I gained weight. Or, oh, my brother is toxic because he asked me to borrow $15 and didn't give it back. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about patterns. We're talking about where it gets to a level that is actually detrimental to you. So I don't want us to confuse normal human interactions, misunderstandings, confusion, differences in personalities with toxicity. Because oftentimes what happens is people will say everything is toxic and everybody has a problem, and they're not able to be self-reflective to say, hey, maybe they were just giving me some feedback that I didn't want to hear. And I want to make that distinction because I think it is very, very important that we don't label everything, even the things that we talk about today. If you experience this maybe to a small degree or once in a while, that you don't start labeling people as being toxic. Okay, so I want to make sure that we have that distinction. So the first thing when we're talking about recognizing toxic behavior, so this includes manipulation, constant criticism, emotional abuse, and other harmful patterns. Understanding what constitutes toxic behavior is important so that we can recognize when it's unhealthy and we can know that it's something that needs to be addressed. So, when we talk about manipulation, what is manipulation? Manipulation is the act of manipulating something in a skillful manner in order to gain control over someone or something or take the power away from it. So again, we have all probably had some manipulative behavior in our own lives, right? All of us have manipulated a situation or another person even. And again, we want to make sure that we distinguish between toxic and, hey, there is a level of manipulation when you may be trying to get your kids to eat their veggies. If you want to be big and strong like daddy, you have to eat those vegetables. If you want to, that's actually to a very low basic level, that's a form of manipulation because you know how much that child idolizes their father. And so you're giving them kind of the incentive. Hey, if you want to be big and strong, you've got to do that. And so again, we want to make sure we're not demonizing or weaponizing very basic, normal human interaction. But when we're talking manipulation in the sense of being unhealthy, that is a problem. So let's talk about that part. Manipulation can be conscious or unconscious. You can have bad intentions or good intentions. It's actually a human trait that we're always trying to get people to do things our way, right? And so everyone has been manipulative in some way in our life. So again, we want to distinguish that. Those things can be small and unharmful. However, if it starts to become, again, a pattern, we want to make sure that we break that. So here are some signs of manipulative behavior. When someone knows your weaknesses and they exploit those weaknesses for personal gain. So personal gain, it means they may know that you have a strong need due to your trauma past that you need to be included or that you have a strong need to be accepted. And so to get you to do what they want you to do, which is something that may not be good for you, they may try to exploit that weakness or your need for connection or acceptance by saying, you're not going to be accepted if you don't do this. No one's going to love you if you don't do this. You're going to be ostracized if you don't. That is a form of manipulation by knowing someone's weaknesses again and then exploiting them for your own personal gain. Trying to convince people, this is another form of manipulation, trying to convince people to give up other people in their lives that are more balanced. And so basically, it's a form of getting them to isolate from people who are healthier so that they can have more control. You see this in a lot of abusive relationships where one partner will try to isolate the other person and try to get them away from their family because they don't want to, number one, be called out on their manipulative behavior. They don't want other people to have a say so. And so it's a form of control to get you to let go of other people or to be angry with other people. You often will see this when you're talking about like custody battles or an ex-husband and an ex-wife. One parent may tell their child, you don't even need daddy. Mommy's got everything you need. Mommy does this. Mommy, you don't need daddy, right? And again, we're not talking about a situation where the father or the other parent is actually being unhealthy to this person. We're talking about when it's in an unhealthy way. So they're trying to keep them away for their own selfish fears or insecurities and that type of stuff. So creating this idea that the other person is a demon or a monster, and I'm the person that you need. And so isolating people can be very toxic and manipulative. Withholding the truth, lying, or blaming other people for all of your issues can be really toxic. Refusing to take accountability for your role in situations can be really toxic in family relationships. So if you go and you talk to someone in your family and you're trying to get an understanding and all they do is blame somebody else or even put that blame back on you, it's important that they're able to stop and say, okay, I had a role in this as well. And so toxic manipulation looks like never taking accountability or minimizing their role and maximizing your role in everything. Making vague accusations can be a form of manipulation. Vague accusations can be things like, you were never there for me, just kind of throwing out stuff. You were always putting everybody else in front of me and not being able to give some specific examples of what you're talking about. So these again are signs that can be used as manipulation. People constantly judging you or ridiculing you, constantly telling you how you're not smart, you're stupid, you all of these bad things, that can be a form of manipulation, because if they tear you down enough, you won't have the courage to step out and leave a relationship or set appropriate boundaries in those relationships. Gaslighting, this is a term that has been hot the past, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I would say. But it really is a thing. Gaslighting really is a thing, right? And it can be really deceptive. It can be really harmful to the people who have experienced someone using gaslighting as a manipulation tactic. But basically, what gaslighting is, it's deliberately and systematically telling people false narratives or false information to get them to question what really happened, to question their memory, sometimes to even question their own sanity. I didn't say that. You're making that up. That's a lie. And you're trying to get them to question their reality. It's very dangerous, it's very manipulative. And when people are doing that, you have to be really mindful to protect your own mental health when you're around someone who will gaslight. Now, here's the thing, there are situations where people can actually and honestly remember things very differently. I remember I was going in and it was a Thursday, and you go, no, 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 I'm sure it was a Friday. And you guys can argue and you can have your points, and you just may remember some things very differently. That is not necessarily gaslighting because you remember things differently. Again, we're talking about intentionality when you're talking gaslighting. And these people, their goal is to try to convince you that what you're saying isn't true, and to make you question your reality, your memory, and your sanity. So it's really important that we don't just confuse a difference in point of view and memory with gaslighting. I always try to make I say sessions, these broadcasts balanced, because I don't want people to hear something and go back and start weaponizing the terms and the knowledge that they get from minding my mental health. Gaslighting is a real thing. Gaslighting is important, but just because you disagree with a parent or just because you disagree with a spouse does not necessarily mean that they are gaslighting you. So I do want to keep that caveat there, right? But again, when you're saying, I know this thing happened and it happened multiple times, and they're giving you a whole different narrative about life, you have to say, wait a minute, I'm not crazy here. I can trust what I know happened. And this only happens with this person. So my mind is okay. My mind is fine. This is someone who's trying to gaslight me. And that is a dangerous situation to be in. Okay. The other form of manipulation is being passive aggressive, behaviors that you're really angry, but you may not express that directly. And so you may give the silent treatment. You may try intimidating looks. Passive aggressive is making little jabs throughout the day, or withholding certain knowledge or affection. That type of thing can be passive aggressive ways with dealing with people. And so you want to make sure that you're not being passive aggressive. And if you're seeing that, again, that can be a form of manipulation. Another one that I see a lot when you're talking about manipulation is a guilt trip. you will find people are so quick to try to use the guilt trip. It could be anything from, I thought you were a Christian, and a Christian is supposed to give because Jesus talked about giving, or I thought we were siblings. Yes, passive aggressive people are annoying. Um, again, we're talking about this guilt trip. Christians, we're supposed to be sisters, and we're supposed to be this, and mom would turn over in her grave if she knew you wouldn't help me. That's guilt tripping, right? You're trying to create this idea that you have to do what I need you to do because I'm going to make you feel so guilty if you don't. And they will use your religion, they will use other relationships, they will use your moral standard to try to get you to do things that they wouldn't even do. So again, you may be operating and handling your finances well, and they're blowing their money. But then they'll say, well, the right Christian thing to do is to help me because I've got kids. Or the right Christian thing to do is to help your sister. Family over everything. Forget everybody else, family over everything. Those are forms of guilt tripping, and it's a form of manipulation. So again, these are things that we're talking about to help you to identify toxic behavior from family members. The other thing is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is patterns of behaviors where one person is harming them with their emotions or their words, not necessarily with physical abuse. Um, Physical abuse obviously is it's bad, right? But emotional abuse can be also very damaging. Emotional abuse can look like name calling, being very demeaning, humiliating, using shame, again using a lot of the guilt tripping, extreme jealousy, controlling behavior, constantly monitoring your activities. So you're constantly showing, those controlling types of things. That can be really, really important when we're talking about recognizing emotional abuse. If someone's constantly name calling you and belittling you, or minimizing your positive things, or minimizing your gifts and your talents, and pointing out constant critiques or constant criticism, those things can be really emotionally damaging. Withholding affection and love can be emotionally damaging depending on those relationships. One of the comments says guilt tripping is bad because sometimes it works. Yes, guilt tripping can absolutely work because they play on your moral compass. They play on your vulnerability. Sometimes they play on your kindness, right? And so that's why it's really important that you can recognize these things, because otherwise you will literally feel so guilty and feel like you are a bad person because you're not doing something that actually may be violating you. And that's important that we talk about. So again, we're talking about emotional abuse. Can be verbal abuse, it can be intimidation, it can be exploiting someone, threatening to tell their secrets, rejecting or withholding affection, isolating, being controlling, lying habitually. All of these can be forms of emotional abuse. So you may have witnessed some of these behaviors in various degrees. And the key is to not stay stuck in trying to identify everything that's bad or wrong within your family. The key is also not to try to control what everybody else does. That's where most of us get stuck. When we can start identifying these things, we get caught up in saying, "Oh, that's gaslighting. Oh, she's doing this. Oh, he's doing this." And we get so caught up in trying to identify everything that's wrong, or we get so caught up in trying to control what the other person is doing that we actually forget that we're taking away our own power. And what do I mean? We get power by establishing the boundary. And so let's get into that a little bit more about how we establish boundaries. So the first thing to do in order to deal with toxic family members is to recognize the toxic behavior. We just went through that really quickly. The second thing is to set clear boundaries. So let's get into ways to set clear boundaries. To protect yourself physically, emotionally, or mentally, or sometimes even financially. This may involve limiting contact, defining what's acceptable behavior, communicating your boundaries assertively, and recognizing that setting your boundary is not selfish. It is indeed self-care. Go ahead, take a minute and share this broadcast. Tag some people that may need to hear these things. And I think it's a lot of people. So go ahead and tag a few people if you're watching this right now. So the first thing to do when you're talking about setting boundaries with family members is, one, to shift your own mindset about boundaries. So many people have been taught erroneously, but they have been taught that boundaries are going to destroy the relationship. People will be mad at me if I set a boundary. But the truth of the matter is, boundaries are healthy for healthy relationships. Boundaries are healthy in helping you to establish healthy relationships. So, setting boundaries can actually help create healthy relationships. Setting boundaries is all about deciding what is and what is not permissible in your life. That is key. Setting a boundary is all about deciding what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in your life. It is not about controlling somebody else. So, to tell your sister, you cannot talk about me ever again, is actually not a boundary, because you cannot control if your sister ever talks about you again. Number one, you're not going to be around your sister all the time. Number two, she's a full grown adult who has the right to say what she wants to say. However, you can say, I won't be communicating with you if you continue to curse me out, if you continue to lie about me. I'm not going to communicate with you. You may even tell other family members, hey, don't tell me when my sister has started lying about me. And if they do, if you continue to bring that news back to me, I'm not going to communicate with you. So a boundary is saying what you allow in your life. It is not telling someone what they can't do in their life. It's saying what you won't allow in yours. Let me know if that makes sense. Let me know if that boundary, that understanding or that distinction between controlling someone else and establishing what you allow in your life is clear. Put a one if that's clear. Put a two if you still have questions about that in the sense of setting the boundary. So boundaries are, again, help you to decide the standard of your own life. You can't stop people from lying on you, but you can stop telling them your business. Jesus even demonstrated boundaries. Why do I say that? Because a lot of Christians are manipulated because people tell them things like, as a Christian, you should blah, blah, blah. As a Christian, and they use that again as a form of manipulation, when in reality, we need to understand that even Jesus had boundaries. Jesus shows us boundaries throughout scripture. I'm not going to go through all of that, but he took time alone to be alone. He would say, I'm going up to pray, and he would do those things. One example I always use was when Jesus was in a place and they said, hey, your mother and your brother are here and they want you to come out. And Jesus was doing something else. And he said, who is my mother and who is my brother? Basically, he was establishing a boundary. Just because they are here doesn't mean I have to drop everything and go see what they want. I am doing something else that is also very important and a part of my purpose. And oftentimes we get manipulated because we use a title, mother, brother, cousin, sister, whoever, and we allow that title to be held over our head and stopping us from actually doing the thing that we need to do. So an example, you need to start exercising, for example. You need to do that, but every time you say you're going to exercise, something comes up and you go, well, that's for my brother, I need to do that. Well, guess what? Your brother has been grown for a really long time, and so have you. You have a right to say, I don't have to drop my purposeful action to help someone who may or may not even be willing to do the things that they need to do this. Okay. So again, Jesus just showed us boundaries throughout scripture. So the first thing when establishing boundary is to shift your mindset to see that boundaries are healthy and they are helpful for us and they are helpful for relationships. Number two is to set a personal standard for how you will value yourself. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Set a personal standard for how you will value yourself and value your time. If there are people around you who don't respect you, they're constantly being disrespectful of your time, of your money, of your energy, of your presence, you do not have to be around those people. And if you do, you get to decide how much time you get to be around these people. And you may even decide how you're going to interact if you are indeed around those people. You get to choose what you do with whom and the time. Your time is precious. And if they don't value it, you don't have to spend it on them. Setting a personal standard for how you value yourself and how you want to be treated is major. Absolutely. Actively opting to surround yourself with people who build you up and surrounding yourself with people who tear you down is your choice. I can actually keep going to the same environment where people constantly tear me down, and I can keep complaining, or I can say, I have a personal standard that I will not surround myself with people who mistreat me. I will surround myself with people who actually treat me well. Here is the caveat here, or here's the difference we need to make sure that we understand. Just because people agree with you doesn't necessarily mean that they treat you well. There are times when you need people around you who will disagree with you, but they are actually holding you accountable. But we're not ever talking about being abusive or being super critical of people. And I think sometimes we get that confused, and we think if somebody ever calls me out on something, I'm going to surround myself with yes men. And I'm not talking about surrounding yourself with yes men. That can also be very damaging. And we have seen that play out on bigger stages a lot in life. You'll see someone and you go, oh, where are their real friends? Their real friends should have told them. Right. And so when we're talking about surrounding yourself with healthy people, we're talking about people who can hold you accountable, but also people who are going to hold you accountable in love, with compassion, with kindness. We're talking about people who are going to build you up and encourage you and be able to support you when you are down, and be able to be there for you, and to help in to advance your life in the direction that you need it to go, right? And so I want to make sure that we understand that just because we're talking about healthy people and healthy relationships, that does not mean that they're always going to agree with you. And so I think that's really, really important that we're understanding. So number one is to establish the clear boundary. You shift your mindset. Number two was establish or your personal standard for how you want to be valued. Number three, this is important, and I see this a lot. You have to release the shoulds. Go ahead and put that in the comments. I have to release the shoulds. What do I mean? Um, Oftentimes we carry from our society this idea of shoulds. Someone should do this, or I should do this, right? And so releasing the shoulds to do what is best for you. Give yourself permission to do what's best for you. Our society and our culture often provides us with shoulds, like you should help family no matter what. Um, we have to release the shoulds that say, family over everything. Sometimes that can be very toxic. What stays in this family should stay. What happens in this family should stay in this family. These are shoulds that can keep you very much in bondage to toxic behavior. It sounds great in theory that we could help our family no matter what, but in reality, if helping the family is hurting you, you are also family, so you have to be included in, and I have to help myself as well. So if your family is toxic, you can't allow these broad cliches to determine how you interact with your family. So what do I mean? People say things like, you only get one mama, you better, do this, this, and this. That's amazing. And that sounds really amazing when you have healthy mothers, when you have a healthy father, when you have healthy relationships. It sounds cool and it sounds noble to say things like, hey, you should drop whatever you want and give it to your mom, if that's a healthy relationship, right? But when we're talking about these unhealthy or toxic relationships, you hear things like that and you start to feel guilty because that's not the relationship you have with your family. And it may actually be harmful for you to do those types of things. And so when you say, well, family over everything, that can cause you to be in a situation where you're damaging yourself, your children, and all of that in the name of family over everything. When in reality, people who say, I say something like, if my mama asks me for anything, I'll do whatever, anything my mom can ask for, I'm going to try to help her with it, right? I have a healthy mom. She's not going to ask me to do something that's detrimental to me. I have a healthy mom who establishes boundaries and respects my boundaries. And so when I say that, I'm saying that from a perspective of dealing with another healthy individual. Now, if someone else says, if my mom asks me to do anything, I'll do anything for her. But what if you're dealing with a mom who asks you to do things illegal? What if you're dealing with a mom who asks you to do things to the detriment of your mental health? So it's important that we recognize we have to release these shoulds. And the shoulds are things that society or even other family members have created that may not be healthy for us. You have to learn to advocate for what works for you. For example, if going home for the holidays always causes you to be emotionally bankrupt at the end of the holidays, or emotionally damaged. I don't know how many times during the holiday season, people will come in and they have been making so much progress with their therapeutic goals. And then holidays roll around and they feel an unhealthy, should that you should be with family on the holidays. You should be with your family for the holidays. And so they go and they put themselves in a negative environment. And then what happens is it sets them back. And when they come back to therapy, they're going, oh my gosh, I was so triggered. This thing happened, and I was more abused, or I was, and so I'm telling you, you don't have to allow the shoulds to control your life when you're dealing with toxic family members. Limiting time with toxic people is a form of self-care. The other thing is, you also have to release the shoulds for other people as well. For example, we often hold people to a standard that they never agreed to, or they agreed to it, but they never had the ability to actually walk it out. Okay. So here's an example. Your mom may say, I promise to take care of you. But if your mom does not have the emotional or mental capacity to give you what you need, and you keep holding her to a standard because you said she would take care of me and she would always be there for me. But if she doesn't have the capacity, you're setting yourself up for disappointment constantly, because you keep expecting someone to give you something that they don't have the ability to give you. And so when we're talking about releasing people from the shoulds of things that we have established for them that maybe they didn't agree to or they can't give, we set ourselves for disappointment. I, just because someone has given birth to you, or just because someone is your sister, or just because someone is whatever, does not necessarily mean that these people have done the work to emotionally be able to be there for you. And sometimes it's actually really damaging for them to be involved in your life. Um, so it doesn't mean we cannot ask people to do things for us, or to share our expectations. That's actually a very healthy action to do. If you're in a relationship with someone and asking them and sharing your expectations with them, that's healthy. However, what we are talking about is when you see a pattern of this person's inability to give you what you need and you keep expecting it, you have to say, wait a minute, they don't have the ability to give me this. If you're saying, I need my mom to just be emotionally stable, guess what? If she's not emotionally stable for herself, she can't be that for you. And so you're angry because you keep wanting her to be a specific kind of grandma to your grandkids or to your kids. You keep wanting her to be able to be affectionate towards you when she's never dealt with her trauma from her own sexual abuse. And you're wanting her to be able to be healed. You're expecting healed behavior. You're expecting mature behavior from someone who is unhealed and immature. It's only going to set you up. So you have to release the shoulds, because you say a mother should, a brother should, a father should. If they cannot, or if they will not, you have to release your expectation that you're going to get that from them. Let me know if this is resonating with you. Let me know if you have comments or questions. I'm trying to keep an eye on all my comments over here. So again, let me know if you have questions or comments about any of this. It's actually important that we recognize when we have unrealistic expectations of people who cannot give us what we need. Okay. Now, the next thing we have to do when we're talking about dealing with toxic family members is to develop self-awareness around your own triggers. Develop self-awareness around your own triggers. You ask yourself, when I go to family functions, when I'm around this family member, what are the things that I know that are going to set me off? So this literally can be anything from, um, you know, every time you see your uncle keep manipulating your grandparents to giving him money and he keeps losing all his jobs, that can trigger you because you care about your grandparents, right? That can be a trigger. You're like, no, grandma, don't give him no more money. He's not going to do nothing but blah, 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 right? Or you see a parent treating one grandchild with care and concern and disregarding the other grandchildren. That may be a trigger. Maybe you see your family members eating in a super unhealthy way and you're going, that is not, you have diabetes, you have whatever, high blood pressure, you have this and that. Why are you eating that way? And it triggers the fear that you're going to lose that family member, or it triggers the anger that you're going to be held responsible to take care of that family member if they don't take care of themselves. And so what happens, you have to, number one, be aware of your own trigger. Maybe you just have a aunt that shows up and she's drunk every year, and she's disruptive, or you have a cousin who always calls and starts stuff. Those are things that you have to be aware of, your own triggers. Why is it important to be aware of your triggers? Because then you can be prepared to handle the triggers more effectively. Knowing your trigger is important because the more you are prepared, the more you're aware of them, you can already figure out how you want to respond to those specific triggers. Again, example, if you know your uncle is going to come in and give your grandma a kiss and say, Grandma, let me talk to you over here in the corner. You already know how this plays out because it happens every single holiday. Guess what? You can simply say, that's grandma's money and I cannot control it. Grandma's making the choice to do that. And so I can release that frustration. Um, or if seeing them eat like a way that's going to hurt their health, you can say, when it's time for dessert, if you got a cousin that gets 3 plates of desserts and eats all 3 of them, and you know they have diabetes, and it ticks you off every single time, and you know it's about to be time for them to pull out the desserts, guess what you can do? You can say, I'm going to go for a walk. And when you come back in, you don't have to see that. Now, does that mean you don't have a right to say, hey, I'm really concerned about your health. I know you were diagnosed with diabetes and the sugar's not good. You can say that, but you don't have a right to force your will onto that person. If they choose to eat like that, unfortunately, that's their body, right? But you have to protect your mental health and say, I can't control them. But what I can do is to say, I'm going to step out. I can share my concerns, but I can't override their desire to eat in a way that doesn't benefit them. Also, here's one of the things that I've seen a lot of times when you're talking about family, the family will, you get controlling because you don't want to be the person. If you are the responsible person in the family, you don't want to be the person that has to be responsible because everybody else has been irresponsible. Okay. So hear me out. If you are saying, I want to control their eating because I know if they have to have medical treatment, I'm the only person that's going to be able to support them financially through this thing. You can determine, you can let them know, hey, I'm telling you, you shouldn't eat like this, but this is how much money I'm willing to contribute to if something happens. If this person keeps selling drugs and I've told them not to sell drugs and I told them that's not a good way, I can say I'm not giving a dime to help with their bail. I'm not putting money on the books when they go in for the 18th time. These are the things that you can do. This is where those boundaries come in. You can't control them, but you can protect your mental health. So you have to be aware of your triggers. And also you have to know if this is something I need to change my behavior. So again, maybe I need to walk outside when it's time for desserts, or maybe I need to change my mindset and say, I want to share with them and give them another bit of knowledge about how 3 plates of desserts is not good for someone who's diagnosed with diabetes. But I also want to say, hey, if you choose to do that, I'm not going to obligate myself to make this happen. My little girl had something today that she wanted to take to school with her, and I said, I don't think that's a good idea because I don't want you to lose it. I think you should leave it here. She's like, but I really really want to take it. And I said, I don't think it's a good idea because if you lose it, you're going to be upset. And she kept saying, I really really want to take it. I said, I tell you what, you can take it, but understand, I am not, if you lose it, I am not calling to the aftercare program to try to find it. I'm not calling your teacher to get another copy of it. If you lose it, it is on you to deal with it because I'm telling you, I don't think you should do that. That is a boundary. Now, as a parent, I could have told her she could not take it. Now, in that role, I had that right. However, I want to begin to teach them how to make good choices. And so I just said, she said, why did you say it like that? I said, because I need you to understand that I'm telling you that I think, based on who I am and knowing you, I think it's a good idea for you to leave that here so you don't lose it. But if in fact you do lose it, I am not making any effort to get that back to you. That is being aware of your trigger so that if she comes and she says she lost it, I don't have to be angry because I've already established that I'm not going to give a bunch of my energy to helping her to recover something that I gave her another instruction on. Let me know if that makes sense. So knowing your triggers is important. Identifying how you want to respond to those triggers is also important. Sometimes we set ourselves up by simply refusing to figure out how we want to move forward with a trigger. So, example, if you know your aunt or your cousin or whoever is going to say something about your weight, or they're going to say something, do something that's really unhealthy for you. If you know they're going to do that, you can already think about how you want to respond. For example, and I'm not talking about it in a mean way, I'm talking about it in a calm, kind way. You can say, hey, thank you. I would prefer that you not make those comments about my weight anymore. That is a planned out way. Hey, I'm not going to go off on them. I'm going to see myself. You can actually visualize yourself responding in a healthy way so that when it happens, you've already saw yourself doing it and it's easier to walk out. Most of the time we visualize ourselves doing the opposite. We visualize ourselves, if as soon as they say something, I'm going to come back with a quick response. You see it around holidays all the time. People saying things like, Oh, if they say this, I'm going to say this. You've already visualized yourself coming back and escalating that situation. Well, you can use that visualization for your advantage and see yourself responding in a calm way, or see yourself responding in a healthy way, or seeing yourself not allowing it to pull you down into this dark hole. Um, being prepared helps you to stay calm, and it gives you more confidence. If you know, again, that being around certain things are going to trigger you, you don't have to obligate yourself to witness those things. The next step is to clearly communicate your boundaries. We're talking clearly communicating is saying what you need, and clear expressing those boundaries. So for example, if you invite your sister over for dinner, and when you invite your sister, she then invites 10 more people, and it upsets you every time, and she keeps doing it, you can clearly communicate, hey sis, you are the only person I am inviting. If you continue to invite multiple people with you, I will stop inviting you. If you continue to do that, I will not let the other people in. If you continue to do that, I will not let you in. Whatever your boundary is, you get to establish it, but it's also important that you communicate it. Oftentimes, what we say is that's common sense, that you shouldn't do that. Common sense is not common for everyone. It is based on the things that you have been taught. There are things that if I go to a farm, I would be, I'm a smart person. If I go to a farm, there are things that I would absolutely be confused about. Someone who was born and raised on a farm would say, well, that's common sense. You wouldn't do that with a cow. That's common sense. You wouldn't do that with a chicken. Well, it's common to them because they have been around it. But what is common to you may not be common to everyone else. And so if you don't clearly communicate your expectations and your needs and your desires, you will be angry with people because you think it's common knowledge, when in fact it is not. Everybody was not raised with the same values you have. Everyone was not raised with even the people that were raised in the same house with you. Sometimes you've developed different sets of values, and so you still have to clearly communicate what is acceptable for you at this point. There are things that were acceptable for you at 20 that are no longer acceptable for you at 50. There are things that maybe you were cool with at 15, you're not cool with at 35. And so you have to be the person that says, I have to tell people what's acceptable. I had a mom come in once, and she was so angry because every year, it didn't matter the holiday, that her family, her husband and her children, would basically get her very, very crappy gifts. And she just would be angry about it, and she would not express what she was wanting. And then, so I was telling her, I was like, you have to communicate what you want. You have to say, hey, I do not want any more t-shirts. I want this. Here's a list of things that I find acceptable, and I'm not okay. And if you get me t-shirts, I'm going to let you know that I did not ask for that. Now, that may seem really mean, but we're talking about constant, and that's a part of being toxic. When you have expressed something to someone and they continue to do the thing that you've asked them not to do, refusing to accept your request or your desires in that way, that's when we're talking about those patterns and not just the one-off situations. So you have to clearly communicate your boundaries and your expectations. I often tell people to use iMessaging when you are talking about clear communication, because it helps to decrease defensiveness when you're talking about other people. So iMessages is, this is what I need, this is what I feel, this is what I think, as opposed to saying you need to do this, you didn't do that. That you word by itself is going to elicit a more defensive reaction. So trying to be more proactive in using iMessages is important. The next thing is to prioritize self-care. Prioritizing self-care means it includes activities such as exercising, um, taking care of your hobbies, doing things like that, seeking therapy, having a support system. All of these things are a part of self-care. Yes, we want to get our hair done. Yes, we want to get our facials and all of that. That's a part of self-care as well. But that's not the only part of self-care. And some of that is being able to actually deal with past trauma, deal with things that happened in your family. I remember watching a documentary. I don't know, I was probably my first or second job and a part of the training, and we had to watch this documentary. And in this documentary, it was about this family that had incest throughout the family. It was a sickening documentary to have to watch. And I remember watching it and just like, oh my God, that was hard for me. So I can imagine the torment and the torture and the trauma that the people that actually experienced that had to experience. If you were a person that grew up in an environment that is very toxic or filled with trauma or those types of things, it is important that you recognize that you may not have done the trauma, but you are responsible for the healing. And so you have to take care of yourself and say, I'm not okay. I need to get therapy. If I keep ruining all of my relationships, I have to get some healing. If I keep losing all of my jobs, I have to figure out what's going on with me. So, prioritizing your self care is important when you're talking about dealing with toxic family members, because if you don't care enough about yourself to do those things, it is more likely, I don't want to say care enough about yourself, if you don't take the steps to heal from those things, it is more likely that you will remain in those toxic, unhealthy cycles, because it's so easy to be pulled back into manipulation. It's so easy to be pulled back into secret keeping. It's very easy if you don't do the work to heal and to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially. Even asking yourself, why am I able to be pulled back into this? Why do I keep giving money when I know that this person's not going to do right by it? Why do I keep um, being able to be guilted into that? Is there a need in me that needs to feel validated? Is there a need in me that needs them to need me? You have to do that self work. And so when we're talking about prioritizing self care, we're talking about prioritizing the self work and the self care, because I think self work is a part of self care. Okay. And the last thing when we're talking about dealing with unhealthy or toxic family members is to learn that you can walk away. Okay. Now that's hard for a lot of people, but you have to evaluate your relationships to see if they are healthy for you or not. Determine if changes in behaviors um, are possible, if they're willing to do the work. And if they are, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying everybody has to be cut off. I don't believe that every relationship has to be cut off, because there are a few things that you disagree about. But there are situations where people are genuinely not healthy for you, and you have to say, all right, it may be time for me to walk away. But the other part of that is to connecting with other healthy people. So it is important that you can connect with people. When we're talking connection, right? You're connecting with people who are healthy for you, building those relationships. I have family members who are related to me by my bloodline, genetically related to me. I also have family members who have no genetic connection to me at all. They are both family. Okay. Now, there are also people who are connected to me genetically that I may not consider family. And there are people who are not connected to me genetically that I would consider family. Family does not all is not totally defined by biology and genetics. Um, Dealing with toxic family members can be a challenging journey, but recognizing their toxicity, setting boundaries, practicing self care, communicating your needs, releasing your shoulds, all of these things are very important when we're talking about navigating life in a healthier way with creating a healthy lifestyle. Your family doesn't always have to be biology. And sometimes I think that's really important for us to understand. Um, Everything isn't toxic, but when it is, you have the right to set a boundary that is healthy for you, that is going to help you to grow, right? And so we have people whose parents literally, have sold them for drugs, or different things, didn't protect them when it from abuse. Those types of things can be really damaging. And so we're not minimizing the things that you've gone through, but I do want to empower you to know that just because you went through it doesn't mean you have to stay connected to people who are unhealthy for you. Let me know. That's all I got. Those are my 7 things. So recognize the toxic behavior, establish healthy boundaries, release the shoulds, develop self awareness about your own triggers, communicate clearly your needs and desires, prioritize self care and self work, and connect with people who are healthy for you. Those are 7 ways to help you deal with toxic family members. Let me know if this helped you. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to give a few minutes. If you have any questions or comments about anything, let me know. I'm going to just pause. I know sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, so I do want to make sure that we have time if you have questions um, or any comments. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, as always, I want to say thank you guys for joining. You guys know every Thursday I'll be right back here next Thursday for another episode of Minding My Mental Health. We are not only tearing down the stigma, but bringing awareness into ways that we can be healthier individuals in our community. I look forward to seeing you guys. I'm still giving it a little bit of time. If you know of someone who is in need of some coaching, love their information. Oh, good. I'm glad you were able to catch that. If you know of someone who needs coaching or counseling, if I can't be your counselor because we have a personal relationship or something, I can help point you in the right direction to help get you connected with someone. So that's important. Let's see. Very helpful. So again, if you need to contact me for any reason, you can give me a call at my office. The number is 470-410-9790. Again, that's 470-410-9790. Or you can send me an email at tenitria@gmail.com. And I will be glad to help you get scheduled and get set up. If you say, I'm ready to do something different and I've got to learn how to heal from being in an unhealthy family or just dealing with past trauma that I need to deal with so that I'm not the toxic person. I think that's the other part. You need to make sure that you're not the toxic person, because oftentimes when we're talking about being in healthy situations, we look so much at what everybody else is doing. You got to make sure you're being healthy. You have to make sure that you're healthy. And sometimes we don't recognize that we're the unhealthy person. I was talking to, I think, who was it? Who was I talking to? The wholeness path. And we were talking about hyper independence or ultra independence. And we were talking about that being a trauma response. Well, it can definitely be a trauma response, but guess what else? It could also be a learned response. And so if you saw your mother or your grandmother be hyper independent, and then you saw your mother be hyper independent, and all of your aunts were hyper independent, you can begin to think that that's just the way things are. And so we may carry some of these learned behaviors into situations, and we recognize that we are actually contributing to that toxicity in the family pool. We are actually being the toxic one because we're being manipulative, or we're spreading the gospel. We're being super critical. We're holding on to secrets that don't need to be held on to. We're doing those things. If you don't do the work, you can perpetuate cycles that you know you need to break. And so make sure that you're not being toxic yourself. Make sure that you're healing and doing the work in order to grow and to be your best self. Again, I appreciate you guys. Even though we are coming to the end of this, I want you to go ahead and share this to your story. Share this broadcast to groups that you are a part of. Tag some friends, tag some families. We want to get everybody. If you are on YouTube, go over there and subscribe to YouTube. I don't have a big following on YouTube, but I want to get those numbers up. So I want you to go right now over to YouTube and subscribe. It's at Tenitria on YouTube, so you can easily find me. Thankfully, the way my mama spelled it, there's not a lot of Tenitrias with my name spelled that way. And so I'm easy to find on YouTube. Go over there, subscribe. And I appreciate you guys. Make sure you join me right back here next week at the same time. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.